it's Coach Tori, and this is Raising Runners. We will be talking about running, mental health, youth sport burnout, specialization in sports, motivation, encouragement, coaching, parenting, sleep, nutrition, really anything that you can think of that we as parents or coaches or just runners can do to help our young athletes. Today, I am talking to Debbie Nolan from Yoga Strong. She works with coaches and sports teams incorporating yoga into their practices so that they can avoid injuries and really just help enhance their performance. She talks to us about the importance of yoga, how that can help young athletes be more balanced, how it can help avoid injuries, also teaching them the difference between pain and discomfort. She talks about specific stretches that she really likes. She also, I really need to give her a shout out because we were working through not the best podcasting conditions. You will hear it gets a little glitchy sometimes, but I promise you it doesn't stay that way. We had a storm and her and I are both in a similar area, so I'm sure we're both getting a little bit of the storm. So we have some glitches. Also, my son was not where he was supposed to be, so he crashes our podcast a little bit. And there's a point where he does leave the room, so I have to go get him. So please bear with us because it is totally worth listening to. She has really great information. So hopefully you enjoy our chat.
So the run club is just for local kids, or?
Yeah, so it's just, we really are in one tiny area at the moment, but trying to branch out to more places. But yeah, it's ages 3 to 13. We have had a few older kids more doing private running classes. But that's mainly who it's for right now. For our summer group, he's trying to ask questions too, I guess. We have parents that are running with the kids too if they want to, so we kind of have everybody at the moment, which is nice.
That's nice.
Yeah, but cool. So I wanted to ask you, well, I guess actually, because I don't actually know anything about you, I kind of just know what Yoga Strong is and looked into that a little bit. So do you want to just tell me a little bit how you decided to do that, where you got into yoga, any other fitness, sports, any of that stuff, kind of all through your life? I know it's kind of a lot for one question.
No, I get it. So I grew up as a dancer. So I know all about injuries and strained muscles and all that stuff. I played field hockey in high school, and then I was a cheerleader. I actually am a high school counselor. So I've been a high school counselor I'm going on my 30th year, actually. So I've always worked with high school kids. So I've been around sporting events, all their stuff, and my own children, of course, played sports. So I've always been physically minded, body. So I dabbled in yoga probably over, just here and there. But I wasn't really drawn to it until about 6 years ago. And to be honest, I was sort of one of those type A, fast go. And when I went to a random yoga class, I was like, it's too slow. It's too slow. However, I went to one about 10 years ago that I thought I was going to die. It was a hot yoga class. It was, 105 degrees. It was hard. And I was like, wow, I guess maybe I don't know what yoga is. So fast forward about 6 years ago, I decided to go through yoga teacher training, which is a pretty big deal. For me, it was a 10-month process. And yoga is a physical thing, but there's also so much more to it. It's about community. It teaches you different ways to be kind. It's like humanity. So when it came time to okay, what am I going to do with this? Or if anything, because I work with high school kids, I was like, you know what, let me try it out with them and see what they think. So started with my baseball team, and they were just a great group of kids, and the coach totally bought into it. He was like, yes, they need it. They, you know, they've got injuries, and they just like lit up when I started doing stuff with them, and that lit me up because I was like, wow, you know, this is, and I was, you know, I saw just come out a couple times, and they were like, no, like, can you come back tomorrow? Can you come back like every day before our game? And I started to incorporate breath work with them, some visualization, imagery, mindset stuff. So I kind of, you know, which is all of yoga. And yeah, they were just so into it. So other schools in my communities, you know, kind of found out what I was doing and were reaching out to for me to come and help them. So that's when I opened Yoga Strong. And I said, well, then maybe I could just make this a little business and, you know, do what I love to do. So that's how it started. And yeah, it's just grown from there.
So I didn't know you were a counselor before. I guess before we get into Yoga Strong and all that, do you or have you seen kids, and I'm sure you probably at some point had struggled with like balancing school and sports, and like, you know, or coming to you with like, I don't think I want to play sports, or like what kind of sports issues, I guess, do you see from that population?
So especially with high school sports, as kids get older and they're getting ready to go to college, you know, a lot of them have a lot of pressure. Some of it could be pressure from parents or pressure from, you know, family. But yeah, they do struggle with balancing academics, life, sports, the whole gamut. So I see kind of a, you know, most high school athletes are not going to end up being pro, or, you know, we know that's a very select few. Some of them will play in college, but again, in college, you know, that's even a step above. Like if you're going to play sports in college, you know, and be a student, that's a lot to balance. So yeah, so I have counseled a lot of kids through those decisions, and it's hard. It's really hard to be that age and, you know, not know what you want to do with your life. Do you want to play? Do you not want to play? And looking at colleges and scouts and all that stuff. So yoga, I think, actually helps them through that. It helps them kind of tune in, you know, to their own body and to their own breath. And it becomes sort of meditative. So it's wonderful for the nervous system, for calming.
So in your training for yoga, do they tell you how to make it more accessible for kids? Because I imagine it can sometimes be harder to get kids to be receptive or to understand, or like maybe even different ways to cue them. Or was that something that you had to figure out since you knew how to work with kids?
Yeah, part of that is in the training. You're always taught how to modify things because, you know, every body is different. You know, you've got smaller bodies, larger bodies. People that have injuries can't physically do certain things. So you are taught how to modify, like if you can't do this, do this. But then there, yes, it also goes with age. So when you're working with smaller guys, you know, and even with my older athletes, I mean, I don't get into all the Sanskrit terms and the, you know, it's a little bit hard for them. So when you're working with younger kids, you just bring it down, you know, bring it down to their level.
So that's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say, I know, like even just with stretching for our athletes, sometimes I struggle with knowing if they know if they're in the right stretch or if they're feeling it the right way. And I'm like, okay, is it because I'm older and things are creakier and tighter that like I immediately feel a stretch if, you know, I'm doing like pulling my knee into my chest or anything, where they're like, I don't feel anything. Do you ever see, because I know yoga can be a little different than static stretching, but Do you ever see like those kinds of issues? And then how do you navigate that with the athletes?
Yes, kids will sometimes say that, like they don't feel something. So sometimes it's just a matter of like like putting a hand on their back just so that they can feel, you know what I mean? Like they feel something. Not like, I don't do a whole lot of super duper assisting with kids, but it's all about body awareness. So I'm also kind of like big into anatomy. So, you know, I do explain to them like there is a way to stretch. Like I use a lot of what's called facilitated stretching. So um you know, actively engaging, say we're doing hamstrings, like actively engaging your quad is going to do the opposite to the opposite side of the muscle, right? So they have to kind of learn that. And it is hard because you're not in their body and you don't know what they're feeling. So there is a lot of cueing involved and a lot of just watching, you know, what's happening in their bodies.
No, that's super helpful and totally makes sense on like, you know, the assisting, but then also watching and all of that. So for Yoga Strong, you are usually working with sports teams, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so do you take up an entire practice? Do you do like warm up and cool down? Like how do you kind of fit into a sports team practice?
So the beauty of that is I totally leave it up to the coach. Typically it will be a 45-minute to an hour practice. But again, there are a lot of different kinds of yoga. Like I was talking about that hot yoga earlier, that was like what you would call power yoga. Like heart rate's up, and a lot of people don't understand that about yoga. They just think it's just stretching. But if the coach tells me, you know, they had a tournament the day before and he wants them to recover, then I'm going to do a much slower, what's usually called a yin practice, where we're holding stretches for 2 to 4 minutes on each side. But maybe during preseason, coach wants to get them in shape and they'll tell me to do a power yoga. But I totally understand the time factor, right? With teams. I mean, they don't always have an hour to give. So I just price it out and let them know, like, what you tell me what you want. I can come in for 15 minutes and just do your pre routine. I can come in at the end and cool them down. So that's the beauty of it, of yoga. And it doesn't have to be an hour.
Oh, that is awesome because I'm sure you see this a lot with working with sports teams is like they have an agenda, they, you know, and they're so busy with like their meets or their practices or games or whatever it is, like there's a lot going on. So being able to fit in with them is so helpful.
Yes, they've got rain dates, they've got, you know, weather, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, you have to be flexible.
Yeah, no, that's great. So with that, you mentioned initially when you were starting with that, I think it was the baseball team you had said, and they were getting injuries and things. So it was like one of the reasons the coach was really on board. Can you talk about some of the common injuries you see? And I'm sure different sports are different, but for young athletes specifically, and then like how yoga can help with that?
Sure. For young athletes, especially with kids that are doing a lot of running, which your group does, I mean, a lot of hamstring stuff. For sports with, you know, that for throwing and things like that, a lot of shoulder cuff, you know, rotator cuff situations. So shoulders and hips, just because they're the biggest parts of our body. But they're pretty common.
And so this, I guess, might be kind of an obvious question or answer, but so how does stretching or yoga, the flexibility, mobility, help them not have those injuries, or can help them, I guess, recover from those things as well?
So it helps them understand, because really the mobility part is more important than flexibility. They kind of can be interchangeable, but you know, the mobility part is what keeps us, you know, going. I mean, and that's why you can do yoga for, you know, forever, because you know, it's great for the body. But what I would do You were asking specifically about injuries, right? I'm sorry. So what I would do is teach them certain things. So again, it's all about body awareness. So most athletes have some sort of, well, we all do, have some sort of imbalance in the body. So they need to come back into balance. And by balance, I don't mean like standing on one leg necessarily, but balancing both sides, right? So like top to bottom, front to back, side to side. And with athletes, especially if they're throwing a ball, they're going to be one side dominant. So, if they're a pitcher and they're right-handed, well, there's a good chance that their left side of the body there's an imbalance there. So by doing facilitated stretching and different yoga poses on both sides of the body, it's helping them understand and feel into their own body to know like what's not working. Because certain yoga poses, like I said earlier, are hard for different people, just depending on the size of their body. Guys are always different, especially with hip stuff, because their hips aren't like ours, right? So just things that you need to modify, but it's really comes down to them understanding like what's going on in their body and feeling it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that kind of goes along with, I think you'd mentioned you also put them on mindfulness and breath work and things like that. And I'm sure that's all just part of your yoga practice and like the different things that they're doing when they're with you. Okay, awesome. Do you have some favorite yoga poses that you love the most? And do you have ones that are like your favorite to have the teams do? Or is it kind of just like, you always are switching it up, or it's always kind of the same routine?
Depending on the team, depending on the sport. But I will always do hip openers. There's something called pigeon. There's something called lizard that really opens up the hips a lot. And again, I teach them different ways to do it. You can do pigeon forward, or you can do it on your back. Again, guys are usually different than girls, so I give them those modifications. And shoulder opening, upper body opening. I typically will always do in a practice.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't do yoga a whole bunch, and I know that I should, but whenever I do, I make sure that I get pigeon in, because those hips always are, especially with running. I'm sure you see that.
Yes.
Always a tight one for me.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I always do pigeon. I love pigeon.
Right. Yeah, I would say that's the best one. But again, I don't have a huge repertoire of different ones that I know. Now, I don't know if you ever have to deal with this, because I'm sure the coaches are kind of involved with, the kids are really not into it, but do you have anything that you like use or can say to kids who really just like aren't buying into like how important it is for them to be stretching and doing yoga and those things for their sport? Like, I know, like when I was younger, and probably even still now, sometimes I'm just like, all I want to do is run. I don't want to have to do the other stuff. Like, how do you get them on board?
Well, that could be hard. But I can honestly say that I've really never worked with a team that they didn't get something out of it, and eventually, even after the first session, buy into some part of it. Even like I've worked with football players, big guys, and they struggle with a stretch. But afterwards, them being like, wow, like, oh my gosh, I feel so much better. And with younger kids, they can be a little squirrely. So, but getting them on board, but it's once they understand and they feel it. So a lot of times with stretching, like in the beginning of a practice, again, because you have time restraints as a coach, you might have your captain, like go warm up the guys or whatever. And it's usually quick, and it's usually them grabbing one leg, grabbing the other leg, boom, boom, boom. And then they go run or do whatever they do. So when I do warm ups and cool downs, like I said before, sometimes we hold those poses for like 2 minutes. Sometimes 4 minutes. I've done. As soon as I tell them they're going to do that, they're like, what? Oh my God, what? But what that does is, you're working into the connective tissue, which is that, like, it's called fascia. It's kind of, it just kind of is what encompasses our muscles, our bones, our structure. And we get like little knots in there from injuries, from repetition, from constraints. So once you start working into that fascia, and the only way you can do that is by holding and sitting in that pose and breathing and just working through it. Sometimes it's a little uncomfortable. And I always tell kids, I'm okay with uncomfortable. Like, you can be uncomfortable for a few minutes. You're not going to die. If you're in pain, that's another thing. We need to back out because something's not right. But, that's the only way that they can really get into those areas to work out whatever's happening in the body.
That was going to be another one of my questions, was the pain versus discomfort, because I know a few times I've done yoga, like, you feel those moments where you're just like, this is a lot. And then if you're not controlling your breathing, you start to get that, like, hyperventilating, breathing, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of just mentioned it, how you talk to the kids about, like, pain being different than discomfort. Is there, like, do you ever run into issues where, obviously you can't tell someone, like, no, you're not actually in pain, but like, how do you help them figure out the difference? Because I think even for me, sometimes I'm like, no, this hurts, I can't do it. And it's like, no, if I breathe and just think about what I'm doing, I know that it's okay, right?
Yes. Yeah, with kids that is tough, but that's why the breath work is so important. And that's something that I teach. It's just a big part of yoga. So the more that they can settle and the more that they can breathe, and we always talk about, I relate it to life, like, I tell the kid, like, who's ever been anxious before? Like, who's ever been angry before? Like, we all have those emotions. And what happens, like you said, the breathing gets shallow. You're not in a good space. And sports are so mental. I mean, they're just as much mental as they are physical. So getting them in the right headspace. So I do a lot of work with the breath. And if they are in a pose like that, where they're, groaning or too much pain, I will start to back them out of it a little bit, but then come back to that breath. Like, let's come back to that breath and maybe see if something changes. And, the breath work is beautiful for, like, pre-game stuff, just getting their head in the game, not the girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever happened an hour ago with your family, getting your head in the game.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I think, at least for me, because I'm sure you're still connected, obviously, with high schoolers because you're working in a high school, but it's easy for us who aren't always working with them to forget that, like, yes, their life isn't as stressful as mine in terms of all of the things I'm doing, but they feel those different stresses of their boyfriend, their girlfriend, their homework, their schoolwork, all these things. I have to go to Ben, who just escaped. Sorry, the door was not closed well enough. But yeah, no, I will cut that out because that was a lot. But yeah, I mean, really being able to focus on those stresses and know that that's another thing for them. I guess at that point in high school, kids probably are a little more aware of, like, how to breathe, do different kinds of breathing, but do you have any way to cue them through the kind of breath work that you're doing? Just because I think sometimes, at least I know it can, like, if you've never belly breathed or anything like that, it can be a little confusing on what you're actually supposed to be doing.
Sure. Yeah, I have them with belly breathing. I mean, I will have them lay on their backs and literally put their hands on their belly, and feel it rise, feel it fill up like a balloon, and then feel it go back down. Another good way to get them for visual people is to, in your mind, imagine a circle. And on your inhale, you're drawing a line from the bottom of the circle, up one half to the top. And then on the exhale, you're continuing to draw that circle all the way down. And then just getting them to have that in their mind.
Sorry, you froze real quick. The last thing you said was if you could start back from the circle with the exhale, just because I want to make sure we got that part.
Yes. So for more visual people, I tell them to visualize a circle and they're closing their eyes. And on the inhale, start from the bottom of the circle, draw a line up the left side. And then when they get to the top, on their exhale, they're drawing that line on the right side of the circle. So it just helps them, see it in their mind as they're doing it.
Yeah, I love that because that's actually not one I've heard before. And I've done a lot of like breathing focus, obviously, like after I had the baby, things you got to focus on. So no, I think that's really great and definitely helpful for the kids to picture something so simple as a circle, right? That's awesome. So you are, I believe, in Delaware, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so where are, I guess, like what schools can you work with? What teams do you work with? Kind of where is your scope of who you're, because I'm, not super far, so I feel like there may be some overlap there.
Mm-hmm. So I do have a few instructors now that work for me because I obviously can't be in, multiple schools at the same time. Yeah, I can work out different programs, but one thing I am doing, and it's because of distance, and I wanted to be able to kind of take this further. I am creating a program for coaches, which is why I started the Facebook group, just to kind of, connect coaches. I know that I know you don't want to go through a 200-hour yoga teacher training. I get that, but giving them just enough, knowledge and information that if I couldn't be there or a yoga teacher couldn't be there, they can, teaching them how they can really incorporate it into their practices without sacrificing all of the other stuff you guys have to do.
That was going to be my next question, was asking you about the Facebook group and what you're doing with the coaches. So is that something you said you're working on that now? Is it going to be out soon this year? And I guess like what, I know you kind of said like coaches in general, but is there like age specific teams or anything like that? Or is it kind of just like, if you coach youth athletes or even adult athletes, I can help you, add this stuff in?
Yes, it's going to be very tailored to whomever. So in addition to a lot of online material, it includes live sessions with me. So if you were, I don't know, 5 hours away, like part of the package would be including individual sessions with the coaches and then even Zoom sessions with the team so that I could come in and do a practice with them. So really, and again, tailored to the sport, because a baseball team might want to do something different than a soccer team, or so really tailoring it to the coaches. And it is just about ready. I'm actually going to be launching it in about 2 weeks. So, if anybody was interested, I could, give you some more information. Absolutely.
Oh, that's like perfect timing, because I was going to tell you after this that this would probably be coming out in like 2 weeks. So I'll make sure that I link your website and your Facebook group. But if there's anything else you want to link so that people can find it, I can definitely put that in the show notes as well. So everybody can find your stuff, because that'll be like exactly when it's coming out. It's like, here, perfect timing.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's so great. I'm wrapping this up just a little short just because of my distraction here, which is like really,
Nope.
I apologize.
I get it.
Like, this is not how I like to do things. And I feel like I just I'm like trying to focus and I'm like, he's running, but
yes, I get it.
is there anything else that you wanted to say or add or talk about that I didn't get to, because I am, scrambled brain over here?
I would just say that, the beauty of yoga is that it's so versatile and it's so, you can just do so much with it. I mean, I obviously study it because that's what I do. But I continue to learn new things every day. I do a lot of reading. I take a lot of classes myself. I follow a lot of, famous yoga teachers. So it amazes me all the time at the different, things that the body can do. And like I said earlier, I'm pretty into the anatomy part of it too, because I think it's important that kids understand, how their body works and what the names of things are. And so, yeah, I just think it's you know, some coaches will tell me like they don't, you know, that's the big thing. They don't have the time, right? Because they have this. And I totally understand that. And that's why I developed this, because you know, you can do yoga for 10 minutes or you can do it for an hour. You know, you just have to figure out what you want to get out of it and what you're working on in that moment and in that part of your season. So yeah, it's just, it really can be incorporated in a lot of different ways.
Oh, totally. And I mean, I'm just picturing all the ways that we could use yoga in the run club, because I know, I mean, we have like tiny little like foam pieces that have like yoga poses on them, and the kids always love to play with them and try to do the poses. So like, I already know it's something they're really interested in. So it'll be great when, you know, I can make it something that we can do a little more often and more structured, like all of what you're saying you're going to be doing to help other coaches, which is so
Yeah.
awesome. So thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me.
You're welcome.
And
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It was great to meet you.
Of course. Yeah, no, this was super awesome. So thank you so much.
Again, I want to thank Debbie so much for not only her patience and her ability to just kind of laugh at all of the struggles I was having, but really just her awesome knowledge and, you know, commitment to helping young athletes is really awesome. I have linked her website so you can check out more information about Yoga Strong. Also, you will see her Facebook group for coaches, and that's like really helpful, useful tool. I'm in that group, and that's how I found her and thought this would be a great episode. Also, if the timing works out perfectly, I can have a link to her new coaching course. Otherwise, just check out her website for that information, because that is coming out super soon, if not already. So hopefully you can check out some of her stuff. Thank you for tuning into Raising Runners. New episodes every Tuesday, and we are always looking to talk to people about running, mental health, or anything along the spectrum that can help our young athletes, or just talking to runners or parents and coaches of our young runners as well. Hopefully you find our resources helpful. If you have questions, comments, or anything else, feel free to email me at marikeyrunclub@gmail.com.